How silence can make them regret everything. The Stoic power of withdrawal. Have you ever noticed how some people only realize what they had after it's gone? Today, we're going to explore one of the most powerful yet underutilized weapons in your arsenal: strategic silence. This isn't about playing games or seeking revenge. This is about understanding the profound psychological impact that your absence can have, and how the ancient Stoics mastered this art thousands of years ago. In this video, I'll reveal 8 devastating effects your silence can have on those who took you for granted, and I'll share 5 Stoic strategies to implement this power effectively without losing your dignity or peace of mind. By the end, you'll understand why sometimes saying nothing speaks louder than any words ever could. Let's begin without further delay. Number 1. Your absence creates a void they can't fill. The Stoics understood something profound about human nature. We rarely appreciate what we have until it's no longer available. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about the impermanence of all things, reminding himself daily that everyone around him could be gone tomorrow. But here's what's interesting. When you're constantly available, constantly responding, constantly there for someone, they begin to take your presence for granted. It becomes background noise in their life. When you withdraw into silence, something remarkable happens. Suddenly there's a void where you used to be. That space you occupied with your attention, your energy, your care, it's now empty. And emptiness has a way of echoing louder than any sound. The person who took you for granted suddenly notices every moment you're not there, every conversation you're not having, every support you're no longer providing. Think about it like this. Imagine you have a song playing softly in the background all day, every day. You stop noticing it after a while. It's just there. But the moment that music stops, the silence is deafening. That's what your strategic withdrawal does. It makes them acutely aware of what they had and no longer have access to. The beauty of this approach is that you don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to justify your absence. The Stoics taught us that we don't owe anyone an explanation for our boundaries. When you simply step back, the void itself becomes the message. And trust me, it's a message that resonates far deeper than any words you could speak. Number 2. They start questioning their own behavior. Here's where the psychology gets fascinating. When you suddenly go silent after being consistently present, it creates cognitive dissonance in the other person's mind. They know on some level that something has changed, and because you're not providing them with an explanation, their mind goes into overdrive trying to figure out why. The Stoics practiced intense self-reflection, examining their own actions and motivations daily. When you withdraw, you inadvertently force this same self-reflection onto the person who took you for granted. They begin replaying interactions in their mind. Did I say something wrong? Did I take them for granted? Why aren't they responding like they used to? This is where your silence becomes a mirror, without you there to absorb their behavior, to make excuses for them, to smooth things over as you probably always did. They're left facing their own actions, and that reflection isn't always pleasant. They might recall times they dismissed you, ignored your needs, or prioritized others over you. Things they never thought twice about when you were always there suddenly seem significant. Epictetus taught that we cannot control what others do, but we can control how we respond. By choosing silence, you're exercising the ultimate control over your response. You're not engaging in arguments, not seeking validation, not explaining yourself. You're simply being still, and that stillness forces them to fill the space with their own thoughts, which often leads to a reckoning with their behavior. Number 3, your value suddenly becomes clear. There's an economic principle called scarcity value. Things become more valuable when they're rare or unavailable. The Stoics understood this deeply, which is why they practiced voluntary discomfort, temporarily removing comforts from their lives to appreciate them more fully when they returned. When you were always available, your presence had no scarcity. It was unlimited, always accessible, never in short supply. But abundance creates complacency. When something is always available, we stop valuing it appropriately. This is human nature, and it applies to relationships just as much as to material goods. The moment you withdraw, scarcity is introduced. Suddenly, the attention you gave freely is no longer available. The support you provided without question is gone. The companionship they enjoyed whenever they wanted it has vanished, and scarcity does something powerful. It makes people recognize value they couldn't see when it was abundant. They start remembering specific things you did, the way you listened when they needed to talk, the way you showed up when times were difficult, the small acts of kindness that went unacknowledged. All of these things, which seemed ordinary and expected when you were present, now glow in their memory with newfound significance. Seneca wrote that we suffer more in imagination than in reality. When you're silent and absent, their imagination fills that space with everything they're missing. And often, their imagination makes your value even greater than the reality was, because absence has a way of polishing memories, removing the ordinary and highlighting the extraordinary. Number 4, they experience the consequences of their actions. The Stoics believe strongly in cause and effect, in the natural consequences that follow from our choices. Marcus Aurelius frequently reminded himself that actions have results, and we must accept those results whether we like them or not. When you remain silent and withdraw, you're simply allowing natural consequences to occur. For too long, you probably shielded them from the consequences of taking you for granted. When they dismissed you, you came back anyway. When they prioritized others, you were still there waiting. When they failed to appreciate you, you continued giving. In essence, you prevented them from experiencing the natural result of their behavior, losing what they didn't value. Your silence changes this equation completely. Now, for perhaps the first time, they're experiencing what it actually means to take someone for granted. They're living in the reality where their actions have consequences. The friend who always had someone to call when they needed something but never reciprocated suddenly has to face their problems alone. The partner who took your presence for granted comes home to emptiness. The family member who never appreciated your efforts has to manage without them. This isn't cruelty. This isn't revenge. This is simply stepping aside and allowing reality to be their teacher. The Stoics understood that sometimes the best way to help someone grow is to stop interfering with the lessons life is trying to teach them. Your presence, your constant availability might have been preventing them from learning a crucial lesson about valuing what they have. Number 5, your peace becomes more noticeable than your presence ever was. Here's something remarkable that happens when you embrace Stoic silence. You begin to experience a profound sense of peace. When you're no longer expending energy trying to maintain a relationship with someone who doesn't value you, when you're not anxiously waiting for responses or recognition, when you stop overextending yourself, something opens up inside you. It's like setting down a heavy load you've been carrying for so long that you forgot how heavy it was. The Stoics pursued ataraxia, a state of tranquility and freedom from emotional disturbance. They achieved this not by controlling external circumstances, but by controlling their response to those circumstances. When you choose silence and withdrawal, you're practicing this very principle. You're refusing to let someone else's inability to appreciate you disturb your inner peace. And here's the fascinating part. This peace becomes visible. It radiates from you in ways that words never could. People notice when you stop chasing, stop explaining, stop trying so hard. They notice when you're no longer anxious or upset. They notice when you've genuinely moved on to a place of calm acceptance. And often, this peace is more disturbing to them than any argument or confrontation ever could be. It's one thing to have someone angry at you. That person is still emotionally invested. But when someone withdraws into genuine peace, when they're clearly fine without you, That's unsettling. It suggests that they've found something more valuable than the relationship, that they've discovered they don't need what you weren't giving them anyway. Your peace becomes proof that life goes on, that you're thriving in their absence, and that realization often hits harder than any words of anger or disappointment. Number 6, they begin reaching out, breaking their own silence. The Stoics taught that we should observe patterns in human behavior to better understand the world around us. Here's a pattern. You'll likely notice when you implement strategic silence, the person who took you for granted will almost certainly break first. They'll reach out, often with casual messages that pretend nothing is wrong, testing to see if you're still available. This happens because your silence has disrupted the established pattern. They were used to you initiating contact, maintaining the relationship, doing the emotional labor. When you stop, they're suddenly in unfamiliar territory. At first, they might assume you're just busy. But as your silence continues, curiosity turns to concern, and concern often leads to action. You might get the "just checking in" message, the "haven't heard from you in a while" text, the sudden interest in your life that wasn't there before. These attempts to reconnect often reveal a lot about their awareness of the situation. Some will be genuine, showing real recognition of what they've lost. Others will be superficial, just wanting to restore the status quo where you were always available. This is a crucial moment, and the Stoics would advise careful discernment here. Epictetus taught that we should examine not just words, but the character and intentions behind them. When they reach out, you must ask yourself, is this genuine growth and recognition, or just discomfort with the disruption of their convenience? Are they reaching out because they value you, or because they miss what you provided? Your response, or continued non-response, should be guided by this discernment. You don't owe anyone a return to the old pattern just because they've suddenly noticed your absence. The power of strategic silence is that you control when and how it ends, if it ends at all. Number 7, they start telling others about your absence. Here's something interesting about human behavior. When someone's silence bothers us enough, we don't keep it to ourselves. We talk about it. We seek validation, advice, or simply an outlet for the discomfort we're feeling. When you go silent on someone who took you for granted, they will likely discuss your absence with others in their life. This is actually a form of acknowledgement, though they might not realize it. By talking about your silence, they're broadcasting its impact. They're admitting, whether directly or indirectly, that your presence mattered, that your absence is noticeable, that something significant has changed. The Stoics understood that sometimes the most powerful statements are the ones we force others to make about us through our actions, or in this case, our strategic inaction. What's particularly powerful about this is that it often exposes the truth to a wider circle. When they talk to mutual friends or family about why you've gone silent, those people might offer perspectives they hadn't considered. Well, you never really made time for them, did you? Or, can you blame them after how you treated them? Your silence creates a space where others can voice truths that your constant presence might have obscured. Moreover, this public acknowledgement of your absence validates your decision. When someone who claimed you weren't that important in their life is suddenly talking about you to everyone, it proves that your impact was greater than they admitted. Your silence has made them a spokesperson for your significance, even if that wasn't their intention. Number 8, they experience regret, the most powerful teacher. Finally, we arrive at perhaps the most profound effect of strategic silence, genuine regret. Not the surface level "I'm sorry" that people offer when they're caught, but deep, transformative regret that comes from truly understanding what they've lost. The Stoics believed that wisdom often comes through suffering, and regret is a particular form of suffering that teaches powerful lessons. When someone takes you for granted and you remain present, they never have the opportunity to truly miss you. They never have to imagine life without you because you're always there. But when you withdraw completely, when your silence stretches from days to weeks to months, reality begins to sink in. This isn't temporary. This isn't just you being busy. This is the actual consequence of their failure to appreciate what they had. Marcus Aurelius wrote about the importance of understanding that time is finite and irreplaceable. When someone realizes through your absence that they've wasted the time they had with you, that they can't get those moments back, that they treated something valuable as if it were worthless, the regret can be overwhelming. And unlike anger or sadness, regret has a way of lingering, of changing how someone sees themselves and their choices. This regret isn't your goal. If you're truly practicing Stoic principles, you're not seeking to hurt anyone, but it's a natural consequence of your boundary setting, and it's often the catalyst for genuine change. Someone who experiences deep regret about losing you might actually grow. From that experience, might learn to value people more appropriately in future relationships. Or they might not, and that's not your responsibility. What matters is that you've honored yourself by refusing to accept less than you deserve. You've practiced the Stoic virtue of wisdom by recognizing when a relationship was unbalanced and needed to change. And you've demonstrated courage by choosing the difficult path of silence over the easier path of continuing as things were. Now, let's explore the 5 Stoic strategies to implement this power of silence effectively and with integrity. Strategy number 1. Prepare your mind through negative visualization. Before you withdraw into strategic silence, the Stoics would advise you to prepare your mind through the practice of negative visualization or premeditatio malorum. This involves imagining in advance what might happen when you step back, how the other person might react, and how you'll maintain your resolve. Imagine they don't notice your absence at all. How will you respond emotionally to that possibility? Imagine they lash out, accusing you of being cold or playing games. Can you remain centered in your decision? Imagine they immediately recognize their mistake and apologize profusely. Will you be clear about what needs to change, or will you fall back into old patterns? By mentally rehearsing these scenarios, you prepare yourself to maintain your silence regardless of external reactions. You remove the element of surprise that might otherwise cause you to question your decision or break your silence prematurely. The Stoic isn't caught off guard by events because they've already imagined them and determined their response. This preparation also helps you clarify your intentions. You're not going silent to manipulate or punish. You're creating space because you value yourself enough to step away from situations where you're not valued. When your mind is clear on this distinction, you can maintain your silence with integrity rather than resentment. Strategy number 2. Focus on what you can control, your presence and energy. Epictetus famously divided all things into 2 categories: things within our control and things outside our control. The only things truly within our control are our own thoughts, judgments, and actions. Whether someone appreciates you, realizes your value, or feels regret is completely outside your control. What you can control is where you direct your presence and energy. This is the essence of strategic silence. You're not trying to control how they feel or what they realize. You're simply exercising control over the one thing that is absolutely yours, your choice of where to invest yourself. When you realize that your presence is a gift, not an obligation, everything changes. Practice this by physically and mentally redirecting your energy. Every time you would have reached out to this person, do something for yourself instead. Every moment you would have spent thinking about whether they've noticed your absence, focus instead on your own growth, interests, or relationships with people who do value you. Your silence isn't just about what you're not doing. It's about what you choose to do instead. The Stoics believed in living according to nature, which includes the natural principle that energy flows where attention goes. Stop giving attention to relationships that deplete you, and watch how quickly your energy returns for pursuits and people that deserve it. Strategy number 3. Maintain your dignity through genuine disengagement. One of the most important aspects of strategic silence is that it must be genuine, not performative. The Stoics valued authenticity above all else. If you're going silent, but constantly checking to see if the person has noticed, if you're posting on social media, hoping they'll see it and realize what they're missing, if you're talking about them to mutual friends, you haven't truly withdrawn. You're still engaged, just in a different way. True Stoic silence means genuine disengagement. You're not silent to get a reaction. You're silent because you've genuinely moved your focus elsewhere. This requires honest self-examination. Are you truly at peace with this decision, or are you secretly hoping for a specific outcome? Can you genuinely be okay if they never reach out, never realize what they've lost, never change? Seneca wrote that a wise person is content in themselves, not dependent on external validation. Your silence should come from this place of self-sufficiency. You're not waiting for them to validate your worth by finally appreciating you. You already know your worth, which is why you're no longer available to those who don't recognize it. This dignity also means that if and when you do eventually communicate again, you do so from a place of strength rather than neediness. You're not breaking your silence because you couldn't stand it anymore, but because you've genuinely decided it's appropriate to engage. This distinction is everything. Strategy number 4. Set clear boundaries for potential re-engagement. The Stoics believed in being guided by principle rather than emotion. Before you enter into strategic silence, it's wise to clarify for yourself what conditions, if any, would lead you to re-engage. What would need to change? What would this person need to demonstrate? What are your non-negotiables? This isn't about creating a checklist to share with them. Remember, genuine strategic silence doesn't come with an instruction manual for the other person. This is for you, to ensure you don't abandon your boundaries the moment they show the slightest recognition of their behavior. Perhaps you decide that nothing short of a genuine apology and demonstrated changed behavior over time would be enough. Perhaps you recognize that some relationships have run their course and no re-engagement is appropriate. Perhaps you're open to reconnection, but only in a significantly different form than before. Whatever your boundaries are, know them in advance. Write them down if necessary. Marcus Aurelius kept journals for exactly this purpose, to clarify his principles and hold himself accountable to them. When you're clear on your boundaries, you won't be swayed by temporary emotions or the temporary discomfort of maintaining your silence. These boundaries also protect you from falling back into old patterns. If someone reaches out with a superficial apology just to restore their access to you, but shows no genuine understanding of what changed or why, your pre-established boundaries will help you recognize this and maintain your position. Strategy number 5. Use the time to cultivate your own inner fortress. The Stoics spoke often of the inner citadel or inner fortress, the unassailable place within you that remains calm and centered regardless of external circumstances. Your period of strategic silence is the perfect time to build and strengthen this fortress. Invest the energy you're no longer spending on an unbalanced relationship into your own development. Read philosophy that strengthens your mind. Pursue physical health through exercise and proper care. Deepen relationships with people who do value you. Explore interests and passions you may have neglected. Use this time to become so rooted in your own worth that you're no longer shaken by others' failure to recognize it. This isn't just about self-improvement for its own sake. It's about reaching a state where your peace isn't dependent on anyone else's actions or realizations. When you've cultivated this inner fortress, your silence stops being a strategy and simply becomes your natural state of being. You're not waiting for anything. You're not hoping for any particular outcome, you're simply living well, and that happens to include the absence of people who don't value you. Epictetus taught that freedom comes from wanting nothing that isn't within your control. When you've built your inner fortress, you're free. Whether the person who took you for granted ever realizes what they've lost becomes irrelevant. You've already moved on to something better, a life where you value yourself enough to not accept less than you deserve. In conclusion, strategic silence isn't about punishment or manipulation. It's about self-respect, boundaries, and allowing natural consequences to occur. The Stoics understood that sometimes the most powerful action is inaction. The most compelling argument is silence, and the most transformative lesson comes from absence. When you withdraw from someone who took you for granted, you're not being cruel, you're being wise. You're recognizing that your presence is valuable and should only be given where it's appreciated. You're allowing them to experience the reality of life without you, which may be the only thing that opens their eyes to what they had. Whether they ever come to regret losing you isn't really the point. The point is that you've chosen yourself. You've decided that your peace, your energy, and your presence are too valuable to waste on relationships that don't honor them. And in making that choice, you've practiced the ultimate Stoic virtue, wisdom. Remember the words of Marcus Aurelius: "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Your silence is an expression of that power, that strength, that wisdom. We've reached the end of this journey, and I sincerely hope these insights serve you well. If this video has helped you, challenged you, or taught you something valuable, give it a thumbs up so that more people can discover the power of Stoic wisdom. Subscribe for a daily dose of Stoic wisdom and growth. And remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Until next time, practice discernment, honor your worth, and live with virtue.